Good morning, brothers and sisters. When I was at home on vacation a few weeks ago, I had a chance to have dinner with some of my childhood friends and now their wives. And as dinner was just about ready to finish, Liz, the wife of my friend Cedric, asked me if everything was all right and the meal was up to par. And I said everything was wonderful because we always go to the same restaurant. It was great. But I think it was scotch in my old-fashioned and not bourbon. As you know, I'm a scotch and a bourbon person, right? And immediately Liz said, well then, you need to get another one. You didn't get what you ordered, and the bartender should know. I, on the other hand, said, no, it's okay because I kind of already finished the drink, and it wouldn't look good to return it. However, the persistence continued. Father EJ, you need to at least let them know that you are not okay with this. Never mind, I said. And then I started to laugh and chuckle to myself, and I turned to her husband, my friend, and I said, is this what married life is like? Because never have I ever had somebody, especially a woman, let alone advocate for me, right? And Cedric lovingly looked at his wife in a way that I believe only people who are truly in love and truly committed to each other can do it. He said, yup. She fights for me to make sure that I'm okay. Now isn't this one of the basic truths about marriage? To make sure that the other, one spouse, is okay. And this love that is shared between a husband and a wife should move one to fight for the other, especially if one is unhappy, in pain, or disturbed. I always tell the couples that I'm preparing for marriage, don't fight with each other. Fight for one another. Another word for this is called passion. The desire to always be close to your spouse. The desire to always be in communion with your husband or your wife. Marriage then becomes the image and the theme for today's readings, and why God chooses to make his love and his promise for humanity known and seen in the love between husband and wife, one man and one woman. In our first reading from the prophet Isaiah, we see the passion of God and his desire to be with his chosen ones, Israel. We know that in the book of the prophet Isaiah, Israel has gone astray. We know that they have been unfaithful. We know that they have forgotten the ways of the Lord, yet God remains faithful. And he puts these beautiful words of advocacy into the words of the prophet Isaiah. For Zion's sake, I will not be silent. In other words, God is telling Israel, I will not shut up until you and I are one. This says that there is something valuable in this relationship that God desires with humanity. That despite what has gone wrong, God is still going to fight for it. He will advocate for the well-being of his spouse, his loved ones, his creatures. He will make sure that they are okay. This reading is a beautiful display of the covenant of marriage and the promise that God makes and promises to keep between you and I. Then we have in our gospel Jesus at the wedding feast of Cana. This gospel in itself is rich in symbolism and metaphors of how marriage is the primordial sacrament. That how in marriage, husband and wife make visible the invisible reality of God's promise of faithfulness, fruitfulness, and unity. But notice a little something off about our gospel passage today. Normally, when we hear a story of a wedding, the focus is usually the bride and the groom. But today, there is no mention who or where the bride or the bridegroom are. The focus, rather, is on Jesus, who is the guest at the wedding. We are told in John's Gospel that Jesus performs his first miracle at this wedding feast, which at first hand might seem more like a party favor because the bride and groom didn't plan well and they ran out of wine. So Jesus in his goodness said, we'll make more wine. But rather, it is only at the prompting of his mother, who also seems indirectly in charge, pushes him to what he's supposed to do. And what is he supposed to do? To fulfill the purpose of the Father in bringing humanity back to him. Therefore, it would only make sense that Jesus would begin his ministry at a wedding, because in it he is fulfilling the Father's covenant and desire to be married with humanity, and it would come to fulfillment in the laying down of his life on the cross. The marriage between God and humanity starts at the wedding feast of Cana and will end in the consummation of the cross on Good Friday. Jesus Christ, the naked bridegroom, doing what he said he will do. I will lay down my life for my bride, the church. I will hold nothing back, not even my life. I would do, if it would be best for her, I will allow my body to be destroyed. In other words, the action of Christ then becomes the action of all married people. I will lay down my life for you. I will advocate for you. I will fight for you. I will make sure that you are okay, even if it means that I will lose myself. I will do everything for you. That's the beauty of marriage. God is good, and marriage is good, because without the love that is shared between husbands and wives, this sacrifice that they make, we wouldn't be able to see God's promise to love and to fight for us. Yet we know, and it is obvious that with marriage comes sacrifice. It is not easy to be married. But if God can do it, so can we, only when we keep our focus on him alone. Remember in the gospel account, Jesus is the focus. Thus, so it must be in any vocation. Marriage, religious life, priesthood, or single life. Christ must be the guest in our vocation. He must be the focus. Without Jesus and the passion of the Father to fight and advocate, none of these vocations will be successful or fruitful. There also has to be a willingness to enter into the struggles that come with marriage. And this is where Mary, the Mother of God, comes to play. Mary courageously encourages her son to begin the Father's will, meaning to begin the passion and the sacrifice. Mary knows that when the miracles start, her son's death will soon follow. But she is willing to partake in the passion and the sacrifice, as she will see it come to fulfillment when she stands at the foot of the cross, knowing that despite all of this, God will keep his promise. And when all of these come together, wine will overflow. Wine, dear brothers and sisters, is the symbol of God's joy and the joy that he desires for all of us. God's grace is for us to know how much He loves us and how much He is fighting for us. Every time we gather around this altar, we participate in the wedding feast of heaven, where God consummates His covenant with us and fulfills His promise, and where He gives us to drink the wine of joy that comes from His sacrifice. So we should ask ourselves this morning, are we willing to respond today to the love that God desires for us? We should ask ourselves, is Jesus the focus and the guest of our marriages, of our vocations, of our families? And are we willing to enter into the sacrifices that come with being in love with the divine, in order to be filled to the brim with the joy that only God can offer us?